Well, the inevitable has happened. I purchased another vehicle. This was not a planned purchase. This was kind of a spur-of-the-moment thing. I found a good deal and jumped on it. And it's another Jeep Wrangler. I have owned many Wranglers, and this is by far the cheapest one I've ever bought. And in fact, I think it's the cheapest one I've ever seen for sale. So I paid $900 for this thing, so let's go take a look at it. Well, here she is in all her glory. We got a 2000 Jeep Wrangler here, just shy of 200,000 miles, 4-cylinder, 5-speed manual, and surprisingly not too rusty. I live in the northeastern part of the U.S., and we get tons of road salt here in the winter, which just rots cars out. And there aren't a whole lot of these Jeeps left without rotted out or patched frames, but this just happens to be one of them. Reason being that it spent the first 10 years of its life in California, San Francisco Bay Area, so it wasn't subjected to the salt for probably about half its life. But we're just going to take a quick walk around here, show you what it's got, and maybe talk a little bit about where I'd like to go with this. It's got a couple cool little features that I think are pretty cool, which I think most people wouldn't really appreciate, but just the kind of things that I like. So anyway, this thing's totally stock. It's one owner. I'm told that the engine's got 70,000 miles on it. It was a brand new engine put in about 70,000 miles ago, but I didn't get any paperwork for it when I bought the Jeep, so I'm just kind of taking the woman I bought it from's word for it. And this was a one owner, so she had a pretty good idea of what's been done to it throughout its life, which is always pretty cool to buy something that's one owner. And that's generally how I like to buy things, because you can kind of get a feel for the owner and understand maybe a little bit how it's been treated throughout its life. So that's a pretty big plus. But we got the stock steel wheels. We don't see too many of these around anymore. A lot of these just kind of junked, and people upgraded the wheels on them, but nice factory stamped steel wheels. The smallest tires I've ever seen on a Wrangler. 205 or 215 70/15s. Spare, which is the same size as stock, was a 205 75 15. It's got a little bit of damage here and there. Fender's dented up here. Hood's peeling. It kind of seems to be a little bit of a problem on these later TJs like this. I've never seen one this bad, but then again, it was in California. I got plenty of sunshine there. Soft top is in terrible condition. It's got a bunch of holes. I think every window has something wrong with it. The zipper doesn't zip here. On the other side, it's ripped. There's no rear window. And kind of been like that for quite some time. Got a few bumper stickers, or at least one that definitely needs to come off there. Now, one of the features I was talking about that's unique to this is that it had no back seat from the factory. You can see all the hardware is in place, so the bolt holes and everything are there to put the brackets in, but I was told that this came from the factory without a back seat. And the reason for that being that, I guess in California, where this was sold, in HOV lanes, in order to use an HOV lane, a high occupancy commuter car lane, whatever you want to call it, you needed to have at least 3 people in the car. However, if your vehicle was sold with only 2 seat belts, you only were required to have 2 people. So this being sold without a back seat only had 2 seat belts from the factory, and all she needed was one passenger to hop in the HOV lane in this thing. But definitely a little beat up, not too rusty. The rust back here by the roll bar, I think, is a result of there not being any rear window on here for quite some time. The floor, however, is in great shape, and actually pulled the drain plugs behind the seats here right after I bought it, because we got a torrential downpour. So kind of surprised the floors aren't a little more rusty than they are from holding water with the holes in the windows and the back window missing, but I'll take it. Now, both doors have these kind of rub marks right here, and at first I wasn't really sure what it was from. I was thinking, you know, maybe the doors got taken off and they both got leaned against something that was the same shape, but I looked at it a little more, and the nuts, the door hinges, are still in place, which means that more than likely these doors have never been off, which is pretty cool. And then I was thinking about it a little more, and this little mark right here lines up with this fender flare. And you can see the rust there, which lines up with the rust on the door. So the door straps on both of these doors are broken, so every time the door opens it swings all the way forward and hits the fender flare. So that's what that's from. Just like that. Now the inside is a little bit of a train wreck. This will be kind of just gutted and cleaned. Luckily there's not a whole lot to gut on these. The carpets are just soaked and musty and moldy, so those will be going in the garbage. The floor on the driver's side has a little bit of surface rust, but there's no rot or rust through. And on the passenger side, there's actually no rust at all. So that is great. The passenger seat is kind of ripped up, and the driver's seat is in even worse shape underneath the seat cover here. And now onto the second feature that I thought was pretty cool. It has no radio, and it never did. So from the factory, this was ordered without a radio because the woman who bought it lived in a city, that city being San Francisco. And having these plastic windows and the soft top, she didn't want to have to worry about having the radio stolen. So she opted to buy the Jeep without any radio in it whatsoever, which also includes this nice rubber antenna plug here. And by my standards and the standards of the Northeast here, this frame is really freaking clean. There's some factory paint left, which is incredible for something that's 18 years old at this point in this part of the country. And the frame isn't kind of delaminating like they tend to do around these holes right in front of the rear wheel. So I think it's really just got surface rust at this point. The underside of the body is in even better shape than the frame is. And that's pretty much why I bought this thing, is because it had a solid frame and a solid body. I paid 900 bucks, and how can you go wrong with that? Like I said, I wasn't really planning on buying anything, but I just kind of came across this deal, and the price was right. If I were to part it out, I could probably get somewhere between $3,000 and $4,000 for parts at the prices that I usually sell these parts for. But I really don't want to do that with this Jeep. It's in good enough shape. It's a one owner, and there's really not a whole lot wrong with it. That's not just, you know, stupid mechanical stuff. So I would hate to see it parted out. And plus it's got the factory radio delete and the factory rear seat delete. And how many Jeeps do you see like that? I just really think that's pretty cool. I don't ever plan on putting a radio in this because that's just really cool to me. That never had one from the factory. Again, you know, most people I think wouldn't be too into that, but I think it's cool. But it does need a lot of mechanical stuff. It's, you know, the frame and the body are good rust-wise, but it pretty much needs one of everything else. I mean, every fluid that can possibly leak on this thing does leak. So what are my plans for this thing? Initially when I found the ad, I thought it would be a great opportunity to pick it up, 900,000 bucks. She was asking 1,000, I got her down to 900. Put a few $1,000s worth of parts into it, and then maybe sell it for a few thousand more than that and make a little bit of profit off of it. However, shortly after I bought it, some long-term plans that I have been planning out for quite a while changed drastically. So now the plan is to keep this Jeep and build it into essentially a budget crawler. Now, if you want an off-road vehicle, if you want a crawler, something like that, I hate mud, by the way, so I'm not even going to get into mud rigs. So if you want a budget off-road vehicle, the best way to go is to buy one that's already built rather than buy something and build it yourself. And you can get things for pennies on the dollar for something that's already built, because parts that get added to vehicles really don't add value to that vehicle. I mean, marginally, some of them can, but for the most part, any money that you put into a vehicle in terms of aftermarket parts or upgrades, you're never going to get back out of it when you go to sell it. So as the seller, that sucks, but as the buyer, that's great. And the last Jeep that I owned, that was my wheeling Jeep, I bought that thing with pretty much all the aftermarket parts already on it. It had a rotted frame, so I fixed the frame, and I did a few other things to it. But I mean, I got a screaming deal on that just because the parts really don't add value. I would have been probably a good 5 to 10 grand past what I had into it if I had bought all those parts on my own and installed them. And that's another thing, you know, if the parts are already on there, you don't need to deal with the labor of installing them either, assuming that they have been installed right, which can be hit or miss sometimes. But being that this Jeep is completely stock and I want to do a budget build on it, we're going to be using a lot of used parts. So I'll be utilizing Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, whatever else I can find, links through the Jeep grapevine, but and anywhere that I can find a used part for a good deal, I'll probably pick it up and throw it on here. So that's, I think, the way that we're going to go with this. Now obviously this is the 4-cylinder, and it, you know, it can be a dog, and people kind of rag on it a little more than I think they should. I've had a few of these 4-cylinders, and I actually like them quite a bit. They've got a decent amount of pep, but not so much power that you're going to get into trouble with them, on the road anyway. And they have plenty of power off-road. It's really just on the highway that they kind of suck. But being that it is a 4-cylinder, and I would like to run 33, 35-inch tires somewhere in there, we're going to need to go into some deep gearing to have enough power off-road to push those and still crawl at a pretty slow speed. So that's either going to need to be in the axles or the transfer case. So the transfer case on a stock Jeep has a 2.73 to 1 low range, so every time that the shaft on the output side that goes to the axle spins once, the input shaft spins 2.73 times, and that just multiplies the torque coming in versus what's going out, and it allows you to travel at a slower speed, which can be pretty helpful. So I would like to go at least 4 to 1 or deeper low range. I would be happy with deeper, but 4 to 1 I would be content with that. And I think I already have a line on a transfer case that will bolt right into this, which isn't very common to find, a transfer case that will bolt directly into a 4-cylinder with 4 to 1. So I think I'm going to jump on that. The axles, stock, they have 410 gears in them, which isn't too bad, but I would like to get down to 488s front and rear with 33s or 35s. I think for street use, 33s and 488s work pretty good. If I go up to 35s, I think that'll work fine for off-road. This isn't going to be a street Jeep. It's pretty much just going to be drive to the trail, do the trail, and drive home. I've still got FJ Cruiser. That's kind of the long-distance traveler and daily driver in inclement weather. And then I've got my V8 Wrangler that I swapped the V8 into. That is my daily driver on nice, warm, sunny days. So I've got 3 vehicles now that could all, in theory, serve the exact same purpose, yet I'm using each one slightly differently. My friends kind of make fun of me for that, in that I don't buy something that's like specifically 4x4 and use it for 4x4, then buy a street car and build it for the street or the strip or something like that. And I don't know, I've always just kind of been into the 4x4s, and that's probably the way it's going to stay. I would eventually like to get a street car, but I really like the 4-wheel drives. So anyway, that's basically where I think we're going to go with this. Things are subject to change, as always, but I think that's the general direction we're going to try to head. I'll keep everything updated with the price along the way as we go. Everything that I spend, all the money that I spend, I'll keep track of, and that will all be presented along with, in theory, what these parts would have cost had I bought them brand new. So we'll kind of get to compare the cost along the way during the build for buying used parts versus buying new parts, and kind of shaving costs where we can. So if this is a build or a project that sounds interesting to you, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and follow along. So that's it for today. Thanks for watching.